Here it is, Monday, beginning of a new week, 17th of November. Always want to get the dates on my stories so I can keep them in order. I've been in the kitchen for a little while. I made some chicken salad. It's been several days since I've had chicken salad, and that's one of my, just hold them back. Always have something like that to handy when you can't think of what you want to eat. Chicken salad is always good. I have a little story for you today, and while I was trying to place some pictures on the wall, got some new ones, and gosh, they're really pretty pictures, and I want to show them off. So I've been going around in circles trying to see where they would go the best, especially since I've got nails holes in the walls everywhere you look. You got to use those nail holes again. I can't add any more to the walls or it's going to look like a pegboard. I don't know what I was doing or reading. I think I was reading something on YouTube, and a little story came to my mind. This is an old story, but I think you'll appreciate it. It's got a little humor to it, and I'll get started with that. I think I'm going to get started with that. I can't remember how I had planned to start this thing. It doesn't matter how I planned it. I don't remember how I planned it when I get going. Let's go back to when I was about 28 years old. Had two children, one in the first grade, one in the third grade. Husband was often gone by then, and there was the three of us. So I'm working in the kitchen, and Jan walks in. She's the 8-year-old. And she says, "Mom," oh my gosh. You know what it means when a kid walks up to you and says, "Mom." They want to do something or they want to know something. And usually they figure it's something you're going to say no to. But in this case, I said, "What is it?" And she says, "Well, Mom, I want to ask you a question." I said, "Go ahead." She says, "Well, I don't think I ought to ask it because it's kind of embarrassing." Uh-oh, what's ahead? Jan, if you want to ask me a question, go ahead and ask me. And if I can answer it, I will. "Yeah, but it's kind of embarrassing." Uh-oh, what's she setting me up for? I said, "Ask it anyway." She says, and she's looking very, very shy. Greg's in the living room floor, just outside the kitchen door, playing with one of his Tonka toys. Well, he's getting curious, sitting there. He doesn't say a word, but every now and then he looks up at Jan, he looks up at me, and he keeps playing with his Tonka toy. He is anxious to hear what Jan's going to ask Mama. "Okay, Jan, ask me the question, and I'll answer it if I can." She says, "Well, I know where babies come from, but what I want to know is, how do they get there?" Oh, Lord in mercy. Lord in heaven, don't wish this on me. What do I do now? Well, I'll do my best. I'll try to answer your question the best I can. So I start out with mom and daddy as boyfriend and girlfriend, and they fall in love, and they get married, and I'm rambling on not knowing what in the world I'm going to tell her about how babies get there. I kept talking and talking, rattling along. And I'm trying to casually explain to my child the sex relationship between mom and dad and the way they sleep together and how they cuddle and so forth and so on. And I reached the point that I have to get a little deeper into the relationship for her to understand where babies come from. And I finally finished with my little spiel. It didn't amount to much. But she suddenly realized that mom and dad do things in bed together. And she looked at me and said, "You and Daddy did that?" Greg's still sitting in the floor twirling the wheel of his Tonka toy. He doesn't say a word, doesn't move a muscle. She looked so shocked, and then she said, "Wait till I tell Betty Johnson." Oh no, no, Jan, no, Jan. This is not the kind of thing you discuss with your girlfriends. I said, this is not a fun thing. This is a private thing between a mom and dad and your family. You don't talk about it like going to buy an ice cream cone and what's in that ice cream cone. It's not something you talk about that way. But she was anxious to get to Betty Johnson the next day at school so she can tell her how babies get there. It's been a long, long time since I thought about that little story and how it worked out. Now, I didn't have to explain the birds and the bees to Greg. I figured his daddy could do that for him. He could handle that a whole lot better than I could. So I never had to tell Greg about the birds and the bees. But Jan knew about the birds and the bees now, and I don't know if I was going to be in trouble or not. But I thought you might appreciate that little story. It also reminded me of a website I used to be on. This was before you could go have a screen and talk to each other and see each other on iPad. You could join a website that someone has set up, and I had joined one from a man in Virginia or West Virginia, I never can remember which. He was working on family history and all sorts of things, so the website built up. He had quite a few followers, and they would send him stories. And I remember the one about this one man. He told it so funny. If only I could get the humor into my stories the way these people did. They told the best family stories ever. So he's asking his mom, where do babies come from? Well, they're sitting on a stump somewhere, and there's a tree is rotted. Tree has been cut down. It's got a stump about 2.5, 3 feet high, And you know how those rotted trees are. They've hollowed out from the inside, and when it rains, that hole in the tree stump fills up with water. Not only does it fill up with water, it gets all these gnats and little flying things. You've seen them flying around in the water, and little what looked like little tiny minnows floating across the water. And she didn't know what to tell her son when he asked, "Where do babies come from?" So she said, "Your dad found you over there in that stump filled with water." Now, these are the kinds of stories children were told, and they didn't know the difference. But it was kind of eerie being told that your daddy found you in a tree stump filled with water and all those little bugs flying around. There are a lot of old stories that way. But I said I would never forget teaching Jan where babies come from, how they get there. Never again was I going to do that. I was working at the UK Medical Center in pediatrics. So my boss and salesmen and what have you were always coming through, and they had booklets and pamphlets and things, for the doctors to give to their patients and the parents for them to take them home so they can teach their children about their bodies, about being a child, how you grow up. And so each time the salesman would give him these little pamphlets, I would take 2 or 3 of them home with me. And what I did was I'd lay them out on the coffee table. Now, if I sat down and read one of them, they wouldn't pay any attention to me. But if I left them on the coffee table as though, keep your hands off my books, they would wait till I was out of the room, and they'd pick up those little pamphlets and start looking at the pictures and reading the pictures, the things in the pamphlet. And I said, now that's how I'm going to teach my children about their bodies and about give them the sex education. They're going to read it themselves from a book. I thought back about when I was a sophomore in high school. My sister was a senior. There was a young couple. They'd been dating. I don't know how long they'd dated, but every time you looked up, you'd see them walking down the hall or out in the schoolyard or on the sidewalk, walking and holding hands. Well, they were a pair for a long time. They were seniors. I think the school principal decided it was time that the high school student got a little sex education in with their math and English and history and all that stuff. They needed a little bit of sex education. So he hired a sociology professor from college that's about 15 miles up the road from us, Union College. The professor came and he started, we only had 2 sessions, and he started explaining about the male body and the female body, and I don't remember what he told us. So 2 or 3 weeks later, he came again. This time, we all had to go into the study hall. Study hall covered about the distance of 3 classrooms. So you could get a lot of kids standing around the wall or sitting at the desk. And he had his easel, and he had his charts, and he was describing this, that, and the other. And on those charts were sketches of the male and female bodies. Now they weren't photographs. They were sketched so that you could see the body parts and all of that. Well, this couple, we knew them well, and we always noticed when they were around. They're always so sweet, and they were always holding hands. Okay, the professor has this big chart up there for all of us to see, and it was the naked bodies of a girl and a boy. Whoa, you talk about embarrassing. We were not used to things like that. So the couple stands back against the wall. They don't even look at each other. When the session was over, the professor took his materials and left. All of the students left the study hall. You did not hear a single word spoken from all of those students. I don't know how many students. There are probably 100 of them. They're moving out into the main hall, going back to their classrooms. Not a word. It beat all I'd ever seen. And then this couple comes out. He walks down the big wide hall on the left side of the hall. She walks down the hall on the right side of the hall. They didn't look at each other. They didn't say a word. I don't know how long this couple had been dating, but they couldn't look at each other after we'd had our birds and bees session. But they eventually married, and he became a doctor. My favorite doctor. He was handsome. He was so friendly. Of course, we knew each other, so used to each other, so we were a little more relaxed than we would be with a new doctor that would have come in as a total stranger to it. But I had so much admiration for this young doctor. He was from what you might call, I'm going to say he was from a poor farm family, but he did well in life. And he's gone now. Oh, I was so disappointed when I learned that he had passed away. But I could picture him and his girlfriend walking down that hall, not looking at each other, not saying a word. Things like that were embarrassing in my day. Today, I don't think it embarrasses the young people if they're doing the sex act in front of you. I just don't understand it. So this is my story for today. Kind of silly in a way, but yet I have visions of that day when we were all looking at the body of a female and the body of a male and learning from this website and from the stories that the sociology professor was teaching us. I have a feeling a lot of you feel like I do. This is such a personal subject. And the movies today, oh my gosh, the movies appall me. I don't want to watch other people having sex. I'm not interested in going in depth. I like the movies where they ended with their arms wrapped around each other and that kiss. And it said the end. Those were the movies I loved. They were so good and so romantic. Nothing like a good romantic movie. So I hope you like this little story, especially when Jan learned how babies get there. Is that the same thing you thought when you were young? I know where they come from, but how do they get there? Let me know what you think of my story. It's just a short one, just a simple one, but yet I think of how it makes you feel when you can look back and think back about the things you didn't know as a teenager, the things you had yet to learn, and now you can sit back and laugh about what you didn't know. So, thank you for watching another of my short stories. I want to hear from you. Bye-bye.